Breach Please, the cybersecurity show for people who are tired of being sold a vulnerable firewall and a feeling. We're Jake Williams and Jess Hebenstreit. Between the two of us, we've broken into networks, defended them, and shown up at 3 a.m. to clean up the messes that everyone else just has hot takes about online. So when we tell you something's nonsense, you can take it to the bank. Here's the deal. We take the security stories that actually matter and we translate them out of vendor speak and into English. And we say things that your CISO probably wishes they could say, but can't because they have a mortgage or a family or things. No fear mongering, no vendor scripts, and absolutely no synergizing our threat posture. If you hear that phrase on this show, it's a duress signal. Breach, please. Pull up a chair. Hey, friend.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. It's going great.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. You're still tired, right?
Still tired.
Still working off the, still not home, right?
Still not home. Yeah.
Still not home. Yep.
Yeah.
So, but hey, we're getting closer, right? One step closer every day.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah. So, what are we talking about today?
Well, first, real quick, I wanted to talk about something else that I'd been thinking about that was really cool about summer camp this year.
Please. Yeah.
I was able to help connecting people. So I have numerous folks that I know that are looking for jobs, or are considering looking for a new job. And I was able to not only connect people to help with that, but also have career conversations with folks and talk to them about what I've learned over the course of my career, what I've encountered, and just give some advice. And it felt really good to be able to share, my history and my perspective and my experiences and help, others that aren't at the same spot, with some of that stuff. And so I felt like I did some really good mentoring and coaching this week that just felt amazing.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah. I did a lot of that as well. Was able to connect a lot of folks. I think we'd already talked about previously that there were a lot of new people out. And sometimes it can be hard to find your tribe, especially in the larger, settings. And I made a lot of connections for folks, and happy to do it. I think you've heard me say before, you have a platform and you're not using it for good, you don't deserve the platform anyway.
Yeah, 100%.
And yeah, I kind of felt that way. I love connecting people and making those kind of growing the community. Right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So, but what we're going to talk about today are one of my favorite things to talk about. If anyone ever listens to another tech briefing type thing I do frequently, vulnerable edge devices.
Right? Vulnerable edge devices.
Yeah.
Usually we're talking about Avanti, it feels like.
We are. I was just seeing if I had a sticker on my desk or not. I don't.
For those that don't know, Jess literally printed up stickers with the no.
Me.
No Avanti.
A cartoon
me.
me.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, her. Yes. Yeah.
It says Avanti on them. So.
Yeah. I love it. I think it's look, by the way, too, if you have Avanti in your network and you're using it as an edge device,
stop.
I don't know what else to say. Look, it is a choice. It's just a choice, right? At that point.
Well, we've gone through several procurement cycles where since this has become very problematic, and it's you are making a conscious choice. And look, I get it's not easy to switch this stuff out. It's a complicated project. It's a complicated project, and I'm the first one to say, don't use the word just. In this case, what are you doing? Because you're literally spending probably more time remediating these vulnerabilities than you would just ripping and replacing.
Yeah. Well, and again, several high-profile incidents, right? One thing we don't talk about a lot in the total cost of ownership, we think about vuln management is how much time are you spending? I've never seen a metric for this, by the way, but it's hard to track. How much time are you spending deflecting questions, right? When you have something major in the media, I know you and I deal with all the
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
Where, you know, clients are like, "Hey, I gotta know, like, how should I frame this?" And they're reaching out to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not for free. They're reaching out to us, right? Literally to ask, "How do I frame this back to my leadership team to
Mm-hmm.
explain that we can wait to patch, or can I, right? In some
Yeah.
cases, right?
Yeah.
So like there's a huge cost here that doesn't get tracked anywhere for having devices that continue to have this vulnerability hype cycle.
And so not only the item you just talked about, but also every time these critical vulnerabilities come out that we're like, oh my God, patch now, they're being actively exploited, blah, 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 blah. That's disrupt work. That's
Oh,
not planned
huge.
work. And so planned work's not getting done. It takes longer to go back to the work that was in progress. And like uh, there's more likely to be mistakes because it's not planned. And so at this point, you really have to be thinking about the cost benefit here of remaining with your existing, if you're using these ones that keep being in the news, and not something else
Yeah.
that
Look,
isn't in the
everybody
news.
has vulnerabilities.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah,
great one here.
totally.
Palo Alto, right? So like I look at the top two vendors for edge network devices, no surprise, right? It's Palo Alto and Cisco. And both have had high profile vulns, right, in the
Yeah,
last several years, right? Palo Alto had some really high profile, like with the is that command injection, I think? If I
I don't
recall, was the big
remember.
one last, I'll look it up while we chit
Yeah.
chat, but again, huge, like I know a lot of the folks that did the round the clock response internally at Palo for that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, just huge costs. But
Mm-hmm.
but let's talk. What are the vulns in the news? I know you sent me one. It's odd. You sent me one, and I sent you one,
Yeah.
right? With
Yeah.
different vendors,
Yeah.
right? Let's chat
But
about
ones that
these
we hear about
all the
often.
time, all the
Often.
time. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Not Avanti though. Not this time.
No, not this time. Just hold your breath. It'll happen.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Go ahead.
so the one I wanted to talk about today was um exploits in Fortinet are allowing the Gunra ransomware to be deployed in these environments, and that it's also leading to some Schneider controllers being exploited as well. And what we're seeing here is that the Gunra, Gunra ransomware targets critical infrastructure sectors, which include healthcare, public health, financial services, government. I mean, everyone, right? It's causing disruption, and basically, what's happening here is that the ransomware deploys these attacks that leverage security flaws, vulnerabilities in internet-facing Schneider Electronic PowerLogic P5s and the Fortinet FortOS and FortiProxy appliances. And that gives them the initial access. And then they deploy this ransomware and they do a double extortion model, right? And so they exfil a bunch of data and then encrypt the data. And then if an organization does not pay the demanded ransom within like 4 to 5 days ish, typically, 6, 7, then maybe then they threaten to publish the data and all of these kinds of things. These have been common attacks for quite a while now. The thing that is most compelling and interesting to me is that once again we're talking about the FortiOS and the FortiProxy, and
Hmm.
I mean, it's barely August, and I feel like at least once a month, if not more often, we're seeing high severity exploited vulnerabilities from Fortinet. And it's in the same systems through Fortinet because they have multiple products, right? It's the
Many.
same ones over and over and over again. And I just
Well,
gotta go ahead.
Well, no, be clear here, right? Because you say they're the same systems over and over and over again. They are the most complex systems, right? That they have.
Correct.
And they share typically, right? Typically share one of two things, right? It's either the admin interface or it's something to do with how they're processing SSL and TLS terminations. We see that again and again and again, right? And that shared code base, right, across different product
Right.
sets. Both relatively difficult. Don't at me on this. Relatively difficult code to write. And by the way, too, right, if I'm thinking portfolio management, I want one copy of that code, not everybody re-implementing it, right? Because
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I
but
mean,
that's why we keep seeing them in the same product sets,
yes.
right?
Yeah. And
So,
in
yeah.
fact, I just wrote a paper that talks about, you know, when you see these platforms
Hmm.
and they're built through acquisition and how there's differences and it's jarring as a user trying to navigate through them, and then as they homogenize, that's a better user experience. That also means shared code base, which means
Yes.
you're going to see these over and over again. If you're having impacts like this, you're going to see it over and over again spread across the same platforms and systems in your portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and again, sorry, I wasn't trying to jump in there with with the note, but I think it is worth mentioning there. And you mentioned Gunra. You said that they were targeting not only obviously not only FortiProxy, but also which vendor did you say they were targeting in the back end? Schneider?
Schneider
Yeah.
Electric Power Logic
Yep.
P5.
Yep. So any thoughts on why that? I mean, I'm happy to jump in here on this too, but any
No, I
thoughts on
need
why
you.
that
That
is?
is not my
Okay.
space at all. Yeah.
All good, all good. Okay, so here's what's happening, right? Look, you are. I want you to picture that you're a small co-op, right? I'm not talking about Georgia Power, right, or Appalachian Electric, or even still exists, whatever. Anyway, I'm not talking about the big players here, right? They have their stuff together. Right?
Hmm.
Work for a couple of the big ones, not ones that were named, and consult with, and they have their stuff together. These small energy co-ops, right? Like, so I live outside of Atlanta up in the mountains. I'm part of my power gets supplied through an energy co-op. I We had like I was recently calling just to give you an idea of like cyber here, right? I recently called to ask like, hey, tell me what the buried cable is so I can like increase my power to like run AI servers and whatnot and some in my house. And they literally had two people that serviced the entire A, did not have records for what they buried. B, yeah, so I had to send somebody out to the house to manually verify it. And there are exactly two people that do any of that, any of the inspection work, period, both for residential and commercial across the entire service area. Guess how many people they have for cyber? Goose egg,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, because they only have two people that can do that, right? They end up having to make security versus usability decisions in
100%.
in these. And so Fortinet keeps coming up here again and again. By the way, Fortinet has some amazing high-end enterprise gear. I want to be super clear about that. They also have some race to the bottom stuff as well, and on enterprise-ish features, right, at very very low cost. And that's why you're seeing these out here. So these are folks that looked at and said, "Hey, I should not connect this PLC directly to the internet." First off, if that's you, go you,
Hmm.
right? And then they said, how can I do this in a cost effective manner? Because my budget is fixed, right? To be able to do this. And so they are able in a lot of these situations to go buy, one proxy of a, let's call it much higher end enterprisey security feature stuff, right? Or they can go buy lots of proxies in the lower end, and that's why we're
Yeah.
seeing that, right? So you're seeing like a substation, a transmission station, a generation plant, you name it, that now is being protected by a forward proxy little box. I don't think rack mount. I mean, literally think like
Hmm.
little NUC size box, right?
Hmm.
So anyway, that's why we're seeing this. But
Okay.
but I'm kind of interested in the like I don't Gunra. I think they may be missing the boat here, right? Because how much ransomware are you really able to deploy in a lot of those networks just doesn't feel back office, sure, right? But like, of course, I guess once you're in anywhere, and these networks are just flat, right? So okay, yeah,
That's what I
I
was
saw
gonna
that look.
say.
Please
Like
take it away, Jess.
they're often flat networks. The
Yeah,
OT is often connected to the IT network,
yeah, yeah,
right? Or maybe you have a firewall, but it's, Swiss cheese, right?
right,
Because
right.
folks are just doing their best. They're trying to deliver, electric to their clients, or whatever utility. And so I I think we're going to see more and more of this where it's coming in from the OT side.
Oh yeah. Well, that is how interesting, right? Because like we still talk about the Purdue model, right, for segmenting IT from OT, at least for critical infrastructure stuff, and this is literally the reverse of that, right? Because the Purdue model never contemplated really it was all about protect IT from reaching OT, right? Not, hey, by the way, then then I added a cellular modem right inside inside layer two of Purdue,
That's
right?
cool, right?
How, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, sure, why
yeah,
not,
yeah,
right? We should mention here, by the way, too, that these flaws that are being exploited, even the FortiProxy CD is from 2025, right? So this is
yeah.
not, yeah, right. No surprise, though, again, right? There is a strong correlation between people who buy race to the bottom devices, and that's what I'm going to call these now, I guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
I say race to the bottom. Maybe that might be a pejorative, but basically the lower end devices to get the job done, right?
Right.
And again, these are better than nothing. We should be very, very clear about that, right? But we should also be clear and we should be honest with ourselves, they're not as good as other devices as well. But no surprise, people in that situation often don't have the patching ability. These are remote stations, remote locations, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have integrated lights out. We talked about that a while back.
Yep.
They don't have great ILO here, right? They've got to actually go out in most cases and patch these. Um, that's just not an easy thing to do.
And
So,
it's not like there's like, 10 across, a couple city blocks. I mean, the I mean, it's spread out geographically
mhm,
across, a large space. It's not a trivial thing
right.
to to make that happen for sure.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Well, heck, like I work with a telco, right? That I'm gonna leave out where specifically here because you can narrow them down too easily. But work with a telco that works in very, very rural areas, and they have stuff set up like that they can only reach via helicopter, right? So if the solar panels go out, like, and they're not providing enough power, the battery
Yeah.
stops charging, the whatever for a given relay station, they need to get in a helicopter to send a tech out there. Um,
Wow.
they obviously have network devices because they don't want to, fly a helicopter every time they need diagnostics. At the
Yeah.
same time, right? Picture yourself thinking about security, and again, what was that triad again that we focus on so often? Is it let's see.
CIA, I
That's right,
think.
CIA. Yeah, that availability being
Yeah.
like a big
Yeah.
thing,
That
right?
is. Yeah.
Picture that you're in a position where you have to make a choice between I'm going to patch this device that I know has a vulnerability, right? And I know there is some failure rate for this patch doing it remotely.
Yep.
And this is now my edge device that protects the everything behind it. And if the patch doesn't work, this is even assuming that you can pull it off remotely, right? But let's just check that box for a moment. If it fails, you are putting someone in a helicopter to go up there, right, and fix this, right?
And the impact
Oh,
potentially
yeah.
to
No.
delivering power, water, gas,
Yeah.
telco, whatever
Yeah.
to your customers as
Mm-hmm.
well. And if we're talking about, like power, water, gas in particular, and it's a hospital
Mm-hmm.
impacted or a school or something like that. I mean, there's big implications here. Like I as a resident don't want my stuff rocked, right? But probably not going to be a problem unless you're one of those like, folks that are reliant on medical equipment at home that must have power, those kinds of things. But, really, if we're talking about hospitals and those kinds of things, I mean, hugely impactful.
Or a rural community. I mean, just to level set, right? A rural community whose lifeline to the internet outside of, and granted, we can say Starlink all day long, but yay. But yeah, well, and I still have it as a backup, right? But
I know a lot of people that do it.
Yep. So, but again, you're losing your connection to to cell service. You're losing your connection to and some of these do actually monitor pipelines, right? That are like super rural, super remote. So yeah, I guess I want to highlight here like there are very real issues with patching these edge devices. Jess, I want to pitch over to you here before we get into the sonic wall vulnerabilities. We've talked a lot, probably not on the show here, I know, but over the years about zero trust, right?
Okay.
And Microsoft recently, last couple of years, had the whole zero trust from chip to cloud, right? What's your position on zero trust with edge devices? More appropriately, do edge devices fit in the zero trust model? Yes or no?
Well, that's what I was just trying to think about in my head before I answered. But thank you. I would love opinions from our audience on this as well. Like, do add us about this one. I am going to say I don't think it neatly fits into the model. And by the way, we're not doing zero trust today with things that fit in the model.
Yes.
So
right? In so many cases. So,
yeah.
But you said it doesn't fit in the model. What's your, I mean, I ambushed you with this. I understand that. By the way, folks, this is what keeps the show real, right? Is us doing this. So I know you haven't had time to think about it. You kind of moved to like, hey, this is kind of where I'm at. What led you there?
So I'm thinking about when I think about zero trust, I start with identity and what you can, where you're coming from, what you're trying to go to, what you're supposed to go to, all of those things. And I'm not an OT person, so please,
this isn't an
everybody.
OT question.
No. Yeah. But I think there is some, okay, so I took your question as these like PLCs.
No, I'm talking just edge devices. Period.
Edge devices. Okay.
Edge devices. Okay. Firewall, right? Apologies, right? So firewall, right? Is your firewall ultimately part of your zero trust equation? Yeah or nay?
Okay, so over the years of talking about zero trust, folks have said to me very confidently that if you do zero trust, you don't need a firewall. I have a hard time with that. I want it to be, I think there's a place for layers of controls, defense in depth, and zero trust, right? Because you still could have even in a well-architected zero trust environment, you could still have a control failure. And so if you have backup controls, you're in a better spot. So yes, I do think firewalls are part of your, I can see the smirk. You're going to disagree with me.
No, I love it. I'm interested in your thought process here.
I think it is part of your zero trust architecture. And especially with today's firewalls, we're not talking, old school stateless versus stateful basic firewalls, right? There's so much that the firewalls do today and so much analysis and decision making, and it's looking at where are you coming from? Where are you going? What are you trying to do? And your firewall can help, do the traffic control on some of that. And so, yes, I think it's part of your zero trust.
I mean, you mentioned identity. Most of
Yeah.
the firewalls that I deploy today, right, can actually look at you. I know remote IP or source IP address for GDPR is identity, but I can actually look at like through an agent, right, that's then sending additional traffic to the firewall. I can make identity-based decisions, so it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter where I'm coming from; it's still me, right?
Yeah.
And so like wildly complex logic. I agree with you. I think it's part of the zero trust stack.
Whoa! Yay!
I know, we agree on this. Now I'm going to ask you a harder question. Um,
No!
what are you doing about it?
Say more.
Well, so like when somebody says, "Hey, right, we have to be smarter about zero trust," right?
Yep.
You and I go in, I go in, right, and I look at two things primarily. First, I look at identity, right, and I try to get you on a single IDP as a source of truth because I can't have multiple sources of truth. And then start making obviously network segmentation is the second piece, but beyond just segmenting the network, I find that a lot of problems that folks have with segmenting networks comes down to they are using a source IP, right, as a
Mm-hmm.
proxy for not a network proxy, as a stand-in,
Yep.
to be careful, you're overloading terms, as a stand-in for identity. And if I can provide that identity, either machine or human, as a first class uh, input to the policy engine,
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of those issues just go away,
Right.
right? But the policy engine is the firewall,
Oh,
is
absolutely.
the network device, right? The edge
Yeah.
device in so many cases, right?
Yeah.
What am I doing to secure it?
Well,
How
I'm
do I
keeping,
validate that it is doing what it's supposed to be doing?
well, one, when every other week these edge device vendors have a critical, oh my God, take it down to the bare middle and
Mm-hmm.
rebuild it issue, I have to prioritize that work.
Yeah.
I have to because otherwise I can't rely on it. My question of does it have integrity is it
Yeah.
comes into play, right? And in
Yes.
so many
Yes.
of these that have come out over the last few years, it has been really, really hard to do the threat hunting on them. And
Yes.
most organizations don't have the time or resources or experience to do that. And it's not part of their core business. And so don't like, unless you have reason to believe that you have a major intrusion and there was lateral movement and stuff, brother, I'm just I'm
Yeah.
I'm following the advice. Look
Drink.
at me. Call me out, you guys. Drink. Um
Drink.
uh uh I'm following the advice of, you know, rebuild it or, patch it
No.
or what have you. You
Come
have
on.
to.
Rebuild is a pipe dream in the vast majority of cases.
I
Like even
know, but if
even
it's if
factory reset.
but
Like,
what was it earlier this year, late last year, there were a couple
mhm.
that was like right in a row
Oh
from the
yeah,
same vendor, might be the one we're
it
talking
was.
about.
No, you're thinking ASAs, I think, right? We had the two CISA. No, well,
I
I don't
don't
know what
think
you were
so.
thinking. That therein lies the problem, by the way, because right, the Palo vulnerability that I was thinking about was from 2024. It took me several minutes to find it because saying critical Palo Alto vulnerability, right, with command injection, it turns out revealed way too many other results. But there was the big one in it was like
Yeah.
April or May of 24, right, with the
Yeah.
CVSS 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I guess we're making the point, right? Like literally, is we're like, no, not that one, no, not that one.
Right. Right.
Like,
No, it's
right,
another one. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. How often is
Totally.
that happening?
Hmm.
And by the way, too, if you're in a homogenous environment, if you're lucky enough to be in a homogenous environment, then you have like one vendor to deal with, right? But
Hmm.
most of us don't live in that world. We deal with some stuff that's maybe a little tech debt as we changed over vendors. We also have merger and acquisition that have brought in other technology
Well,
stacks,
and let's
right?
not forget, for a while here, a lot of security practitioners were giving the advice of to have a heterogeneous environment so that if one vendor failed, you had a backup vendor, right?
And and you've heard me scream about this for
Yeah.
more than a decade,
Yeah.
right? Because
Me
like
too.
I have never given that advice. That is advice from people who have and forgive me if you're one of the folks that's been given this, come on the show. I'll have you on any time, and we will happily debate live, respectfully, of course, right?
Hmm.
Where you're getting that from, and the operational realities of putting it into practice. But that's it. These are largely, I hear that's like a litmus test for me. Like, do you work in security? Did you read about it in a book, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, but
Yeah.
the homogeneous, I mean, the whole, or sorry, the heterogeneous environment, use different controls around. That's like, really, really,
Right.
yeah, it's a management nightmare, right? Even
And
something,
complexity and
oh, yeah,
yes.
even something as simple as don't just patch, rebuild the firewall requires you to have a lot of confidence in your configuration management. And I'm going to tell you that I think that's probably misplaced in a lot of well, not, I mean, I think it is misplaced in a lot of
Yeah,
organizations, right?
100%.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So, okay, so we want your opinions on this, right?
Yeah.
Do network edge devices fall under zero trust, right? If so, what are you doing about it, right? I love the idea of prioritizing patching. I'm going to challenge you on that and say that, and even like rebuilding to bare metal or factory reset, you name it, which again is a whole new level of downtime, risk,
I'm not
etc.
saying it's easy.
Oh, I know you're not. I know you're
Okay.
not. But what I'm saying is, even if you took those hard steps, right? Can you be confident in the integrity of the device?
Absolutely not.
See, and that's where I'm at. I put this today in the too hard bucket, right?
Mm.
I think we don't do a lot of work here. And by the way, like Sophos published the Pacific Rim report, where they highlighted, they're like, look, we have telemetry. Sophos is in a unique position as a
Yeah.
Soho, small medium business, right? People don't turn the telemetry off on those edge devices, and so they have telemetry that your big vendors just are never going to get,
Hmm.
and tracked, actively tracked and messed with Chinese threat actors implanting those firewalls, implanting
Yeah.
those edge devices, and then laterally moving into networks. And by the way, I don't need malware on any of your endpoints. If I own the firewall, I don't need malware,
No.
right? Because I can come right back on demand. I'm in the network. I have the hard, crunchy outside, soft, gooey inside. And before anybody's like, Jake, I don't do soft, gooey inside, I'm going to ask you what controls the policy for making sure it's on a soft, gooey inside? Let that sink in for a second,
Dun,
right?
dun, dun.
Right? So yeah, I think this is a really hard problem. I think it's one we need to be talking a lot more about in the cybersecurity community, because today most folks that I know, and that I talk to and I've asked this question to have they don't even get to this is part of the zero trust stack, and that's
Right.
just wrong.
Yeah.
I will die on that hill if you're going to come and say, by the way, in the comments, like, no, it's not part of zero trust, right? Then justify, right? You've heard us,
Hmm.
like, you can communicate why I think it so clearly is. Again, it's the policy engine for so much that we depend on for other pieces of zero trust that like nobody's arguing that's part of zero trust, right? So it's a piece of foundation. Um, yeah, I mean, I think people just throw it in the too hard bucket because they don't have a good solution for it. And to your point, it's hard enough to threat hunt even inside a network after high profile firewall vulnerability. And a lot of folks like patched it, done,
Yep.
right?
But
And
there
that's
were a
necessity
couple that went
business.
out where it was like, yeah, there was a patch released, but oh, whoopsie daisy. Actually, what needed to happen was this new patch, plus you got to take it down to the bare metal.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and
I swear that was a
was
Cisco
it?
thing, but you know what? It doesn't. At the end of the day, it doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't
The point
matter.
is, it's happened again and again and again,
Yeah.
right? You and I know, have worked incidents. I remember one in particular that I'm thinking of a couple of years back, with an edge device, and we'll leave the vendor name out here, but the folks had patched, and the problem is in the interim, the threat actor had DC synced. Right now, I
Yep.
know you remember this
Yep.
had DC synced out of the network, right? And so what
Yep.
can you do from a vulnerable edge device? Now, if you're like, how did they get domain admin creds? That is a whole separate issue in and of itself, but not an un well, but not an uncommon
Right.
configuration,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Because like to do it right from a security perspective, especially because this was an org that was doing identity-based policy
Yep.
on the firewall, on the edge
Yep.
device, which is great. And that identity was tying into Active Directory. And you don't need a domain admin cred there, but it does make a lot of other things easier, right? Anyway, the long and the short of it is, here they patched, and they still were burned with a large scale incident after the fact because lack of threat hunting. And honestly, at the time that had happened, that was a really hard thing. Like later, that there was a bunch of stuff in the network they could have seen. The time they patched, if they'd followed our advice and threat hunted, I'm
not convinced they would have
have
found anything.
right. I'm not convinced I would have found anything. Right? Not saying that the data wasn't there. What I'm saying is like I would have been given 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever. It's a short period of time. In the places I'd have focused, I probably wouldn't have seen because just by dumb luck, right? Some like not the closest domain, not physically the closest domain controller took that DC sync. And the threat actor had already looked, had named the domain controller in the right naming scheme and the whole. I mean, well done. It was the long and the short of it, right? So yeah, well done.
Yeah.
Woof. We could go on and on.
We could.
What do you think? Is this the episode?
I think this is the episode.
Okay, but call to action, right? We do want to hear about the zero trust with your networking edge devices. What do you think we should be doing about this? This is something I do intend to talk about a bit more. It's a passion project of mine, and so getting people to really look at, today we're building a lot of stuff on what I think are shaky foundations. We have data to show that in the past they've been shaky foundations. The problem is, I don't know how to bring in a foundation inspector and say,
right, and then even if we could, how do we implement the recommendations to shore up that foundation?
Oh,
if there are any.
Right, but I think you may be thinking foundation from an architecture perspective. I'm saying you've already architected it correctly. You architected it. How do I know those devices are not compromised? At any given day, any given point in time, I don't have the solution for that today. The industry, I should mention, does not have a solution for that today, right? So like I could, if I had infinite dollars to spend, I could call in Cisco engineers or Palo engineers or whatever, and they'd bring me a brand new, clean device. They'd configure it and use my same.
You know what? I have an idea.
The original one down to the bare metal. Yeah.
What if we put in a Palo and then an ASA and then a Fortinet and then an Avanti and then a Sonic Wall and then fucking rainbow tables or something?
The only positive thing I have to say about that is that you protected the Avanti with something else. But yeah, so very seriously, folks, like long term, this is something I do intend to talk more about. I think it's a really important problem here. I'm trying to still work through solutions. Right now, it's all best bad plan or wave your hands around and pretend it doesn't exist, right? So head in the sand, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to read us out?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the episode. Did we make you smarter? Tell your friend. Did we make you mad? Tell your vendor. Probably one on here that you can tell. Breach Please is a production of and copyright of JWJH Media, LLC, all rights reserved. Legally, the opinions of our hosts are our own, although we are an LLC, so Anyway, the opinions of our guests are theirs alone. We didn't have any, so I'm just going to skip that. None of this is legal, financial, or security advice. Do your homework before pointing anything we said at prod. Thanks for listening. Patch something. Make a threat actor's life suck a little more. Follow the 3-2-1 rule better than I did at Hacker Summer Camp, and see you next time on Breach Please.